The Netflix series Hilda, based on the comic of the same name by Luke Pearson, has received great acclaim for its incredible animation and inventive storytelling. But another interesting aspect of Hilda is the vast array of creatures and beings that inhabit the world of our intrepid heroine. As it turns out, most of the beings that Hilda and her friends encounter have real-world mythical counterparts. Because of this, I thought it might be a fun idea to compile a bestiary, explain the origins of the beasts and creatures that Hilda encounters in Season 1 of the Netflix series. So without further ado, here is Hilda's Bestiary, Volume 1. Trolls are the first creature that Hilda encounters, and even for our intrepid adventurer, they tend to evoke feelings of fear and panic. Stoned during the day and living at night, trolls in Hilda's world are typecast as bloodthirsty, aggressive, and dangerous. Though as the series goes on, we discover that trolls may not be quite as advertised. In episode 5, Hilda's friend David accidentally brings a rock to school that turns out to be a baby troll. While the young troll wreaks havoc at the children's parent-teacher night, things get even worse when the troll's parent shows up looking for its child. Things end on a relatively happy note, however, as after they are reunited, the trolls quietly leave. Well, maybe not that quietly. The trolls depicted in Hilda, at first glance, are very similar to the trolls of Norse mythology. While they may share a familial relationship to the giants of Jotunheim, over time, the trolls of Norse legend evolved or devolved into a race of subhuman creatures that inhabited caves and woodland, not unlike the trolls that surround the forests and fields outside of Hilda's home in Trollberg. Also, just like in Hilda, the trolls of Norse mythology were nocturnal creatures that shunned the light, as it turned them to stone. Like their giant cousins, the trolls of myth are generally depicted as ferocious and a bit bloodthirsty, though this is not always the case. As it happens, the first depiction of a troll can be found in a Viking Age poetry text from the 9th century. In it, the famed poet Bragi the Old has a poetic exchange with a female troll. While her appearance is never described, the poet clearly identifies herself as a troll, stating that, "Trolls call me Moon of the Dwelling Ragnar, Giant's Well Sucker, Storm's Sun's Bale, Cirrus's friendly companion, Guardian of Corpse Fjord, Swallower of Heaven's Wheel, was a troll other than that." While it's difficult to interpret the exact meaning of her poem, except for maybe the line about swallowing Heaven's Wheel possibly being a reference to the end of the world, what we know for sure is that this lady troll is definitely a lot more articulate than the trolls we see depicted in Hilda. That being said, however, I feel like the trolls in Hilda represent a kind of middle ground. As, while it's true that I can't see them entering any poetry contests, they definitely aren't the ferocious, bloodthirsty beasts that the rest of Trollberg believes them to be. Also in episode 1, we are introduced to the elves, tiny invisible creatures with a strong fondness for paperwork and a dislike for Hilda, who keeps stepping on their invisible houses. According to Alpha, a kindly elf that befriends Hilda, elves can only be seen or affected by those who have signed the proper paperwork. Without the proper documentation, elves can neither be seen or touched by humans, though apparently the elves can touch and affect humans and their belongings. In the world of mythology, the term elf can be applied to a boatload of different beings, none of which, at least as far as I can find, completely match the elves depicted in Hilda. That being said, however, there are a few depictions of elves in mythology that bear a slight resemblance to Alpha and his clan, most notably the light elves depicted in Norse mythology. I know, it may sound a bit crazy to try to compare Alpha to Legolas, but hear me out. Anyone who's seen Thor Dark World knows that elves in Norse mythology are divided into two camps, the Dark Elves, or Svartalfar, and the Light Elves, or Liosolfar. While it's true that the Light Elves, unlike Hilda's elves, are known to be tall and incredibly good looking, not that Alpha isn't a looker, they also, as the name would imply, have very light skin, not unlike Alpha and the rest of his clan. Also, the Light Elves seem to share Alpha's love of paperwork, as they apparently have a very well-organized government with a heavy reliance on issuing reports. According to one tradition, it's believed that the Light Elves of Norway make a yearly pilgrimage to deliver a report to the Elf King regarding his subjects' level of fidelity and obedience. In addition to this, the system of government employed by the elves in the show, with one prime minister and one king, does match the two viceroy ruling system which is reported to exist among the light elves. This is where the similarities end, however, as the light elves of Norse mythology do not share Alpha's diminutive stature or powers of invisibility, though there are many other species of elves that do. For instance, it's believed that the brown dwarfs of Germany could turn invisible with the help of a magical cap, while the so-called tidy people of England, like Alpha, were quite small, spanning the length of the distance between a man's thumb and small finger, with thread-like arms and legs. Though these elves were not quite as cute as Alpha. What I'm trying to say is that Hilda's creator could have drawn from numerous sources when developing his elf characters, and since I don't feel like going over all of them, I think it's time to move on to Not unlike the elves, giants can be found in myth and legends from around the world. But the giants in Hilda, particularly the mountain giants, may have some connection to the giants of Norse mythology. In Hilda, giants are divided into two categories, forest giants and mountain giants, with both categories being a reference to their relative size and place of residence. While the mountain giants are literally the size of mountains and tend to reside within valleys, the much smaller forest giants live in the forest. Duh. While we learned relatively little regarding the forest giants in the first season, the mountain giants and their resemblance to the giants of Norse mythology is kind of uncanny. First, in episode 2, The Midnight Giant, we are told that the mountain giants are among the first inhabitants of the valley where Hilda lives. But as humans and other smaller creatures evolved, the giants found that their presence made life difficult for the valley's smaller inhabitants. Sick of the constant fighting, the giants decided to leave the world entirely and jump into space. In Norse mythology, there are several species of Jotnu, or giants, one of which is the mountain giant, or Burgusar, large mountain-dwelling creatures that are reported to cause earthquakes and landslides. According to Norse myth, Jessica and Hilda, giants were the first creatures to come into being, with the first of their kind, an ice giant named Ymir, arising out of Gunningap, or the great void in space that exists between the worlds of fire and ice. However, not unlike the mountain giants, Ymir and his kin eventually outstayed their welcome, and all but a few of them were eliminated by the Norse gods, including Ymir, whose frozen body was transformed into a glacier. Not unlike the giant in Hilda who falls asleep and becomes a mountain. At the end of the episode, the two giants decide to join the rest of their friends and jump into space. While this could be a veiled reference to the giants' destruction, since I assume that they still need oxygen to breathe and food to eat, it could also be a reference to the origins of Ymir, who was born in the void of space. It would also be a mistake for me not to mention that the giants of Norse mythology have their own world, called Jotunheim, which is supposed to exist underground near the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil. But seeing as how the world of Hilda tends to make up its own rules, it's completely possible that Jotunheim could exist in space or on another planet. But that's an answer for next season. Now it's time to move on to Now it's time to switch things up with a mythical creature from North American mythology, the mighty Thunderbird. Okay, so maybe Hilda's depiction of the Thunderbird is a bit less mighty than others, but to be fair, the depiction of the Thunderbird often differs from tribe to tribe throughout North America. For instance, native tribes living along the northwest coast of America believed that the Thunderbird was so massive that it could hunt whales, while the Dakota tribe of North and South Dakota worshipped the Thunderbird as a supreme deity, second only to the Great Spirit, the being that is believed to have created the world and everything in it. There are even tales of the Thunderbird taking on human form. For instance, in a myth told by the Passamaquoddy tribe, a young man witnesses a group of men from a mountain village transform into Thunderbirds and is then transformed himself into a Thunderbird by the village elders. I wonder if that's why the Thunderbird in Hilda can speak. Despite the massive amount of inconsistencies regarding the depiction of the Thunderbird in Native American lore, Hilda's interpretation does include what are essentially the creature's most notable characteristics. Basically, that is a massive bird that generates thunder and lightning. In episode 4, we along with Hilda and her friends are introduced to the Vitra. a group of plant-like creatures that live underground. The term vitra is used primarily in northern Sweden to denote a rite or spirit that protects and preserves the land. Rather than smelly animated plants, vitra in Norse mythology are generally depicted as small people with a passion for raising cattle. Just like in Hilda, the Vitra of Sweden raise their own cattle and are quite adept at milking and tending to livestock, even going so far as to steal the livestock of human farmers. Though the Vitra always return them, often in better health than they were before they were taken. However, while a good relationship with the Vitra can be beneficial, it would be in everyone's best interest not to piss them off, as they can be downright vindictive when angered, something that Hilda and her friends found out the hard way. The Mara, a nightmare spirit from Scandinavian folklore, has a fairly accurate depiction in Hilda. Appearing in the guise of female spirits, Mara would enter a person's room through a crack or keyhole where they would sit on the sleeper's chest, causing them to have bad dreams until morning. Just like the Mara of myth, the nightmare spirits depicted in Hilda are a group of female spirits that cause bad dreams so they can feed off the person's fear. Unlike the Mara of legend, however, the spirits depicted in Hilda are all teenage girls who, as opposed to being born Mara, transform into nightmare spirits by feeding off the fear of others. Wow, it seems teenagers in Hilda's world would do anything when they're bored, even transform themselves into demonic nightmare spirits. I hope it wasn't this bad when I was a teenager. But the Mara in Hilda could actually be a lot worse, as the Mara of Scandinavian mythology would occasionally kill their victims by suffocating them to death. For instance, in the Gunga saga, a man named Valandi gets the wrong side of a witch who sends a Mara to suffocate him in his sleep. This story and the mythology of the Mara in general are more than likely connected to the phenomenon known as sleep paralysis, a condition that occurs before or just after sleep where a person finds that they are unable to move for a short period of time. Many people who have experienced sleep paralysis describe feeling as though a weight is pushing down their chest, abdomen, or throat. It's also not uncommon for victims of sleep paralysis to hear voices or feel as though there is a presence watching them. Though unlike in the story of Valandi, death is not like the outcome of sleep paralysis, just mind-numbing terror. In episode 7, Hilda and her friends encounter the Lindworm, a long, dragon-like creature that lives on an island outside of Trollberg. The term Lindworm might be derived from the old German word for dragon, Lindworm, though depictions of the creature in British art shows a being that looks almost identical to the Lindworm we see in Hilda, i.e. a serpent-like creature with no wings or back legs. Along with its physical depiction, the Lindworm in Hilda also has a love of gardening, which may be a subtle reference to a Norwegian fairy tale called The Lindworm Prince. In the story, a barren queen, in an attempt to have a child, follows the advice of a random stranger who tells her to ingest one of a pair of magic roses. Unfortunately, the queen messes up and eats both roses at the same time, and because of this ends up giving birth to twins, one boy and one Lindworm. While the story does end with the Lindworm being transformed into a handsome prince, though rather than true love's kiss, the method involves riding crops and a milk bath, the Lindworm's connection to the earth and gardening could have definitely influenced its depiction in Hilda. After happening upon a book of magic spells, Hilda decides to summon a tide mouse to help her friend David during his singing audition. According to the book, a person that possesses a tide mouse can accomplish almost anything without fail. But unfortunately, Hilda neglects to read the entire spell and doesn't realize that the owner of the tide mouse will have their soul removed if the spell is not undone before so much time has passed. Oblivious to the spell's negative consequences, Hilda decides to summon another tide mouse to help aid her mother, and then must rush to undo the spell before their souls are lost forever. Upon seeing this episode for the first time, I assumed that the tide mice were something that Hilda creator, Luke Pearson, fabricated for the comic, thinking that they were too crazy to exist in the world of mythology. But it turns out I severely underestimated the number of insane creatures that exist within Scandinavian myth. In Iceland, if you were low on funds and happened to live near the ocean, you could simply summon a tide mouse by weaving the hair of a chaste maiden into a net and leaving it on the shore where treasure is believed to dwell underneath the waves, as tide mice can only be found in proximity to silver and gold. Then, after you caught a tide mouse, you were then able to take it home and place it in a box with a clump of maidenhair to use for its nest. Hopefully not from the same maiden, because most women will probably be averse to giving you so much hair. And then place some money underneath. Every day after this, when you check on the tide mouse, you will find that the money has doubled, and will continue to do so as long as you do not remove the original amount of money. While the tide mice of Iceland are similar to those depicted in Hilda, they can only be used to build your bank account and don't steal their owner's souls or require a very intricate ritual to undo the spell used to summon them. There is, however, one very negative consequence to summoning a tide mouse, as it's believed that if the owner of the tide mouse does not return it to the ocean before they die, the very pissed off tide mouse will find its way back to the ocean on its own and create massive storms. So if any really bad storms crop up in Trollberg Bay, we know who to blame. The Nissa are Norwegian house spirits, which unlike the creatures in Hilda, are generally depicted as little old men with white beards. Like gnomes or a really tiny version of Gandalf. Also, unlike the Nissa in Hilda's universe, the Nissa of Norway were believed to be crucial to the prosperity of the house and farmstead, as they were believed to provide a valuable service doing chores and taking care of animals. In exchange for their hard work, the Nissa would be given basic room and board, but if the owners failed to treat the Nissa properly, they would leave the house, often never to return. While it is mentioned that the Nissa of Hilda's world did at one time receive offerings from humans, it's pretty clear from what we see in the show that this is no longer the case. While it isn't explicitly stated in the show, it's possible that as time passed and technology advanced, the role of the Nissa became smaller and smaller until they were no longer looked at as helpful spirits, but as useless freeloaders. I also assume that the Nissa of Hilda's world, not unlike the Nissa of myth, don't have names, as when he was asked his name, Hilda's Nissa friend responded by saying his name was Tontu, which is actually the name used to refer to house spirits in Finland. It should also be noted that, just like the Nissa in Hilda's world, the Nissa of Norwegian myth are also known to be fairly antisocial, preferring the company of animals to that of people or even other Nissa. This is probably why Tontu states that the thing he misses most about his old home is the duck that lived in the pond outside. The biggest difference between the Norwegian Nissa and those depicted in Hilda is in relation to their powers. While it was believed that the Nissa of Norway could turn invisible by donning a magical red cap, the Nissa of Hilda's world live within a magical subdimension that is a combination of all the empty, unused space that exists within a person's home. And yes, this is as ridiculous as it sounds. I mean, if all the extra space was used to make up the Nissa dimension, or nowhere space, then wouldn't that mean that there would be no extra space left in Hilda's world? I don't know, but that's all I have to say about the Nissa, so let's move on to... The last entry in our bestiary is the Black Hound, a large black dog that haunts the streets of Trollberg and ends up causing quite a bit of trouble for our intrepid adventurer. Thanks to Alpha, we know that the Black Hound is called a Barghest, which he explains is essentially a very large feral dog. Unfortunately, according to myth, the Barghest or Hellhound is quite a bit more dangerous than the creature depicted in the show. While the Barghest in Hilda is essentially just a big misbehaving puppy, the Hellhounds of myth would stalk the roads at night, stealing the souls of sinners and dragging them down to hell. While Hellhound-like creatures exist in tales and myths throughout the world, it's believed that the Hellhounds of Europe and Britain have pagan origins, and could even be connected to the myth of the Wild Hunt. In Europe, particularly in northern, western, and central Europe, it is believed that the local gods would take part in an annual hunt. While the details of the hunt tend to differ from region to region, in most versions, the gods are accompanied by a team of large dogs that might, according to some myths, hunt the souls of humans, either living or dead. As Christianity became more prominent, however, these otherworldly beasts were incorporated as hellhounds that hunted the souls of the damned and sinful. Just like in Hilda, the Barghest is generally described as a large black dog with glowing red eyes, a baleful howl, and a terrible odor. It's admittedly never mentioned in Hilda if the Barghest smells bad, but if it's been living in the woods for that long without a bath, I assume it smells pretty rank. Trust me, I speak from experience. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this more in-depth look at the beasts and creatures of Hilda. If you have any ideas for future videos, or if you like this video and want more like it, please put a comment down below. But until next time, this is Silver Jade saying, please remember to support your local library, and I'll be seeing you.